First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for saying how I'd choose my adoptive family over my biological one any day? When I was born, my biological family gave me up for adoption as they had no desire to be a mother and a father to me. I don't have any memory of them. And even though I've never met them in person or got to know them, I've still despised them for giving me up so easily. I grew up in an orphanage, and the children there would constantly harass and ridicule me, and it wasn't very pleasant. It took a while to find an adoptive family for me, as most people in my country prefer adopting newborn children instead of a grown-up. I was losing hope, and I've started to think that nobody would take me in, and I'd stay there forever. However, a very lovely couple met me while I was in the orphanage and seemed to like me, and I've liked them back. They were honestly so kind to me and praised me for my art that I've drew. It didn't take long for them until they finally decided they'd adopt me, and it was the happiest moment in my life. I was so glad to be part of their family. About a week ago, I've got a call from my adoptive mother saying that she had just got contacted by people who claimed to be my biological mother and father, and that they'd like to meet up with me sometime, and I've agreed. Once I've met up with them, we're talking about general stuff, but then it began to turn really awkward as they were ignoring some personal questions I've asked them. Later, they started speaking about my adoptive family. They said how they've seemed like boring people and asked me how I could even stand to be in the same room as them for a minute. My biological mother criticized the way my adoptive mother dressed, and my biological father said how my adoptive father seemed like someone I'd be ashamed to be related to, and that I'm lucky I'm actually not. The second they've said that, I've lost it. I told them that I'd choose my adoptive family over them any day and that they were cruel and horrible people who do not have the authority to say anything about them because they were the people who saw me as a burden and got rid of me. My biological mother was crying and my biological father was silent, but I couldn't care less. I put on my jacket, got out of the shop and called my adoptive father to come get me. I think I'm in the right here, but a part of me is saying that I'm the a-hole in this situation. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not an a-hole. They should be grateful that you are loved and taken care of. Not an a-hole. They're complaining about the pettiest of things. OP's adoptive family were there in his life when he needed them. His bio parents came in when the hard work had been done and have the hall to be insulting. He made the right decision. Not an a-hole. They decided after abandoning you they get the right to ask to meet you, ignore your questions, and insult the people who have cared for you? Screw your bio parents. They're actually the worst. They were given an opportunity to reconnect with you and they spat on it by insulting your real parents. You did the right thing putting them in their place. Not the a-hole, not even a little bit. Your birth parents, however, are absolutely the a-holes. Insulting your adoptive, real supportive parents was a manipulative power move and in no way acceptable. Good for you for standing up for them. You're a damn good person. Not an a-hole. People give children up for lots of reasons, and I wouldn't fault them for choosing to give you up when they couldn't take care of you themselves. But your bio parents get no sympathy from me. Not because they gave you up, but because of how they spoke about the people who took you in. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for threatening a restraining order against my daughter's mother? Okay, so some background information. My 23 male, daughter's mother, 22 female, let's call her Emily, got pregnant when she was 16, I was 17. Emily was very against abortion, so despite me telling her I was not ready to be a father, she was adamant to keep it and give it up for adoption, which is also what her parents, who were furious at me, wanted her to do. I was not okay with this at all. Having grown up in the foster system myself, I did not want my kid to go through the same thing. Eventually, we decided that she would give birth and then relinquish full custody to me, who would raise the baby, despite my prior hesitation. Fast forward to current day, our daughter, Rose, has started school, although this year has been a mess with school, and I live with my boyfriend, Adam, 24 male. I love them both to the ends of the world, and I'm very happy with our little family. We are also in government support payments since we don't make a lot of money. Now on to the actual issue. A couple of months ago, I received a Facebook message from Emily. She said she wanted to check in and see how Rose was doing. I found this a bit odd, since she hadn't shown any interest in her at all, but I obliged and told her that she was doing well and was happy. She then started sending me more messages over the next few weeks asking questions about Rose, like where she went to school, how she behaved, etc. I didn't tell her the school she attends, since I was starting to get suspicious that she had an ulterior motive, and my suspicions were confirmed when she asked to come visit her. I said no, because I felt that Emily didn't truly care about Rose, and I don't trust her around my kid. I had already decided that if Rose wanted to meet her when she was old enough, that would be fine, but not when she was so young. Anyway, Emily got really angry when I said no, saying that it was her child and she had a right to see her. She started saying that I was a horrible father, abusive, and that I was forcing our daughter to only have male paternal figures and that it would damage her. I eventually blocked her, but that only made it worse when 2 days ago, she showed up at our unit, unannounced, and demanded to be let in and see Rose. I wasn't home, but Adam was there with our daughter, and he told her to leave or he would call the cops. When he told me what happened, I was freaked out, since I don't know how she found our address, and I feel really anxious. Emily then sent me more messages from a new Facebook account, and I told her that if she didn't stop, I would seek a restraining order against her. This is where I'm wondering if I'm overreacting about this whole issue. My boyfriend agrees with me and so does his family, but some of our friends are saying that I'm just being paranoid, and that it's just my anxiety and that threatening her with a restraining order is too harsh. But I don't understand why Emily is so interested all of a sudden, and it makes me uneasy. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Why now? Because 5 years old are way less work than infants/toddlers. She isn't interested in being a parent, because if she were, she'd be taking the legal route. She wants to get involved now for the fun stuff. Her behavior appears unstable and you have a family to protect. Get a restraining order. Exactly this. There is a reason she isn't going through the legal system. She wants to be in the daughter's life for the fun parts and then give her back when things get hard. She doesn't want the law saying she's responsible for taking care of this child. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Protect you and your family. Someone who wants a healthy relationship doesn't go about it in such an unhealthy way. She found your address without you giving it to her. To me, that's grounds enough to start the legal process of getting a restraining order. Make sure all legal paperwork regarding custody is in order, though. If the two of you didn't legally fill out the paperwork when Rose was born, it may give Emily more of a leg to stand on. Good luck, Opie. Not the a-hole. Threatening a restraining order is not too harsh. Actually, getting a restraining order is not too harsh either. You were not paranoid. She actually showed up at your house. It was fine for her to check in her daughter's health and see how she was doing, even ask if she could meet her. It was also fine for you to decline. She gave up her parental rights. You were on exactly the right track. When your daughter is old enough and wants to meet her mother, a meeting can be arranged then. Get the restraining order immediately. If you haven't already, save every message and communication you guys have had since you first reached out. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not wanting to pay an exact replacement for something I broke again? Hello. I, male 20, feel justified in my response, but my dad does not. My younger brother and my mother are backing me up. Our home has black carpeting. It is very difficult to see black items on it, and that has always been the case. My father's glasses are black. He has an awful habit of leaving them on the ground, where they are frequently stepped on. I've broken them 5 times already. My mother 3 times. My brother about 7 or 8. My father a couple of times. They've also been broken by a friend of mine who came to visit, and once one of my brother's friends. They're always on the ground. He leaves them at most random of places. Until today, I got off the couch and there was a cracking sound. I looked down, and it's my dad's glasses. Again. So I pick them up and let him know. He looks at them, and he reckons that they're too broken to be fixed this time around, and asks me to pay for replacement. I'm refusing. Firstly, I don't have the income for buying an exact replacement. His frames were on the expensive side. Secondly, and more importantly, although I'm the one who broke them, I think it is his responsibility. At some point, to me, if your glasses keep getting broken because you leave them on the ground, the solution isn't to bill. The solution is to stop leaving them on the ground. Like there was a week where they were broken every other day. My reasoning is probably a-hole, because ultimately, at the end of the day, I am the one who broke them, and my dad sure thinks so. So, Reddit, Am I the a-hole? Should I suck it up and just get him the glasses? Edit. Hey, I appreciate all the responses, but please stop implying my dad's being malicious or our family dynamic is unhealthy. It's not. I know him. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. The ground is meant to be stepped on. If you put your things on the floor, in a place where it's hard to see even when people know that you have a habit of doing so, you are condemning your stuff to be stepped on. The biggest piece of evidence that OP is not an a-hole is that his glasses have been broken 10 plus times by 3 plus different people. If it was just OP once or twice, that's one thing, but the father really needs to get his stuff together in his case. Nope, not the a-hole. Nuclear option, get yourself a nice pair of thick sole house slippers. Then start scattering black Legos on the carpet. Maybe then he'll get the hint about how hard it is to see stuff on the carpet. Other less nuclear option, every time you enter the room, ask your dad if his glasses are on his face. If not, drop down on your knees and crawl across the ground looking for them. Once you find them, loudly proclaim, "Got it." Then hand them to him and tell him how lucky he is to have a great child like you who looks after him when he's careless. Not the a-hole. I don't care what color your carpeting is. You do not leave glasses on the ground. Your dad is refusing to take responsibility for his mistake, and that's his problem, not yours. Seriously, I get anxious leaving my glasses anywhere other than my face or their case. I can't imagine just casually leaving them on the floor. If someone doesn't step on them, one of my cats will sit on them. And now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents that while I appreciate my hand-me-downs, I would really like some new clothes for once? I'm 16 female, the youngest of 10, 36 female, 34 female, 31 male, 30 female, 29 female, 27 female, 24 male, 24 female, 23 male. My parents had me when they were in their late 40s, thinking it wouldn't happen, but whoops. My parents have been saving clothes for when my siblings started having kids. But since I happened, I got most of them. Every piece of clothing I've ever been given off my parents and most family members, since they have 4 plus kids each, Mom was one of 8 and Dad was one of 17, give me hand-me-downs too. The only thing that's ever bought new for me is underwear and shoes. I've not gotten brand new clothes in nearly 2 years now. I'm an awful lot smaller than all of my siblings and most of my family members, 4'9" and the UK size 4, so I normally fit in clothes they would have at 10 or 11, so I get them instead of clothes I'd actually like to wear. I was speaking to some of my siblings about this pre-lockdown, and they all said they never got as many hand-me-downs as I do. I just kind of assume since my parents are old, despite being quite well off, are tired of clothes shopping business, so they just give me old clothes instead. On Monday, my mom handed me a bag of clothes and said to go through it and see what I liked. I asked her if when retail shops are open again, could we go shopping for a few bits that I would really like and would be age-appropriate? She asked what was wrong with hand-me-downs, and I said that while I appreciate them, I would like new clothes that are just mine. She didn't say anything after that, but she looked kind of annoyed. She's been kind of quiet since then. I'm starting to think that maybe I came across as entitled or bratty. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Just wow. You're a teenager, of course you'd want the latest clothes. Clothes now aren't that pricey. Go to Zara and H&M. Honestly, just ask you can just online shop with her. What is wrong with your mother? If you want kids, be willing to pay for them in all ways. In my country, they love to open shops and restaurants of international brands and make them more luxurious. For this reason, this comment hurts my soul, because Zara is really expensive here. Not the a-hole. My god, did they not have TV for entertainment? If you said it like you wrote it, you didn't come off as entitled or bratty. Seriously, it sounded like a reasonable request that was respectfully worded. Not the a-hole. You're 16, and you deserve to dress like one. There's nothing wrong with hand-me-downs, but if they're really expecting you to wear children's clothes just because you fit them, they're being ridiculously stingy, and honestly kind of rude. They're ignoring the fact that you're aging/maturing even if you're not growing anymore. If your parents won't do it, then ask your older siblings or other relatives, as a birthday or holiday gift, to take you. Even thrift and second-hand stores, as a last resort in case they tell you new ones are too expensive, almost always have codes for teenagers. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my cousin what our family were saying about his wife and causing him to cut everyone off financially? My uncle had a kid from an affair who he abandoned to the system. My grandmother found out when he was 12 and took him in. This was a huge scandal, not only our family but also our social circle, because everyone is all about appearances and protecting the family legacy. If I'm being honest, my family weren't very nice about my cousin. I remember when he first came to live with our grandparents, my own mother told me not to socialize with him too much in front of outsiders so he doesn't ruin my reputation. I was 8. When he graduated, the family didn't want him involved in the family business because of his parentage and also because he was pretty closed off and was only close to our grandparents and no one else in the family. So our grandfather gave him some money to start something of his own. The family business hasn't been doing well for a long time, but my cousin is doing better than ever. Despite everything, he's been financially helping all of us for a few years now. Recently, our grandparents told everyone he was married and expecting a baby. This was a huge shock to the family. Our grandfather admitted he suspects our cousin got the woman pregnant by mistake and chose to do the right thing based on a few conversations he had with him before he announced his marriage. My family immediately cyber-talked his wife and they said some awful things about her, and everyone was complaining that he could have done so much better. My dad was even encouraging everyone to make things hell for her so she leaves. I told my cousin what they said. I'd like to say I did it for selfless reasons, but I didn't. He's paying for my tuition after my parents refused to help since I dropped out the first time, and based on his personality, I doubt he's going to be very forgiving once they started this crusade against his pregnant wife. Well, he cut everyone off except me and our grandparents. He never told anyone it was me, but since everyone is floundering trying to figure out what they're going to do now and I'm not, it didn't take much for them to figure out I was the snitch. Now, my family are angry at me and calling me all sorts of names. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. They never accepted him as a family member. If they never accepted him, why do they deserve his help? They don't. They were mooching off him and only wanted his money. They didn't care about treating him like family. You were right to let him know exactly how they felt about him and his pregnant wife. You seem to actually care and accept him as family, so it's not selfish to let him know. He may be helping you with college, but you care and treat him well. You have accepted him as family. Good job. Not the a-hole. The biggest and best indicator that you're not the a-hole is precisely because what you said below. Now, my family are angry at me and calling me all sorts of names. Your family is messed up, so what they think is wrong is most certainly what's right and decent. Not the a-hole. Stick with the grandparents who've proven they'll stand by their grandchildren, like they did with their cousin. And your cousin who has done things out of the kindness of his heart. These people have been nothing but awful. Get the hell out of your parents' sphere of influence as soon as you can. Not the a-hole. Never piss off the one holding purse strings. Even if your motive were less than pure, you did the right thing to let him know what they say behind his back. Another saying I heard was, never bite the hand that feeds you. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for forcing my brother-in-law to hold my baby, his nephew, just for a bit while I was folding laundry and traumatizing my brother-in-law? I honestly didn't know the reason why he was so reluctant. This happened a few days ago. So, while I, 25 female, was around 6 months pregnant, my husband, 25 male, was unfortunately furloughed from his job, so we moved into his brother's, 38 male, house. His brother's fairly well off, and I'm not exactly sure what he does for a living, but he's mostly just in his office from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., so I don't really interact with him. I do appreciate that he let us move in while we were in a tight spot. When we moved in, he made it a hard rule that I will have nothing to do with the baby, so don't expect anything from me. But otherwise, y'all can have free reign of the house. That was 5 months ago. Brother-in-law actually doesn't really interact with any of his nieces or nephews. Sister-in-law's kids, 4 of them all under 10, as my husband has told me. Though he does send them gifts for birthdays and stuff, but definitely not an involved uncle. Skip to now, we have a beautiful baby boy. And brother-in-law stayed true to his words of not wanting anything to do with his nephew, and he just mostly stays in his office. My husband thankfully landed a job in the same field as his last job about a week ago. And even better, he's able to work from home. So we're set to move when we can save up a little more. And he was working when everything went down. Yesterday, while I was folding laundry, my son was getting fuzzy and wanted to be held. And at that moment, my brother-in-law came out of his office to grab something. I asked him if he could just quickly hold his nephew while I finished up folding laundry. Casually just says, "Nah, I'm good," and started to walk away. I admit I got really freaking mad at that point. Like, he can't even help for a minute while I finish up folding laundry? So I picked up my son and walked over to brother-in-law and placed him in his hands and said, "Just help out. It's just a baby. It won't kill you or anything." My yelling upset my son, so he started crying. He handed me back my child and very coldly says, "I told you, I'm good." And then he quickly retreated to his office. I was left really confused. And then my husband came out of the room he was working in to see what all the commotion was about. I explained what happened, and he just starts freaking out and said I shouldn't have done that. And he goes off to talk to his brother. My husband is now demanding I apologize to brother-in-law and explained something no one has ever told me. Apparently, brother-in-law had a wife 10 years ago who passed during childbirth, and the child later passed due to other complications, and brother-in-law never really got over it. My heart sank. I asked why I was never told this, and all he said is, "My brother's a very private guy, and it wasn't any of your business knowing his past. Please just apologize to him." But I wasn't able to. He has yet to come out of his office or room, and my husband just leaves food at brother-in-law's door. So I want some outside perspective. Am I the a-hole for forcing my brother-in-law to hold his nephew but accidentally opened a pretty bad scar? Now for the top comments. Laughing my butt off. OP. Isn't homeless because brother-in-law was being kind and gracious. Brother-in-law. I just have one boundary. Keep your baby away from me. OP. Gets pissy and forces brother-in-law to hold the baby. Husband, you should apologize for breaking boundaries and picking fights with a man who is keeping a roof over our heads. OP, shocked Pikachu face. Yeah, you're the a-hole. Not everyone feels comfortable with kids. You already got a freaking house from the guy. You owe him, not the other way around. This is some Greek mythology gourmet stuff. Like, did OP never read the legends and myths? When a dude does something benevolent with a strange yet non-harmful boundary, you keep that boundary. No means no. You're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. He said no. No means no. Yes, you're a giant a-hole for bullying a grown man into doing what you wanted. It doesn't even matter why I didn't want to hold your baby, but it does make it that much worse. You owe him a very sincere apology. They literally live in the guy's house, but still thinks it's okay to cross the one boundary he had. You're the a-hole. No means no. He does not mean no, but this one time I'll make an exception, lols. You don't need to know the reason why. You just needed to respect his one house rule. He was kind enough to let you stay there while you and your hubby got back on your feet, and he only had one thing he asked of you, and you still couldn't follow through with that. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my future sister-in-law that I won't be attending her child-free wedding, causing a lot of my other family members to drop out as well? My future sister-in-law is marrying my brother next summer, and they are planning to have a child-free wedding. I have about 3 other sisters and we all have kids, as do most of my cousins at this point. Our family is kinda spread out over the country, and my brother/sister-in-law's wedding is out of the state for most of us. Once I found out they wanted to make it child-free, I began to lose interest in going to the wedding. I don't want to be away from my kids for a couple of days, and it is just a hassle to find them living arrangements for when my husband and I are gone, especially since most of our adult family members will be at the wedding. We'd have to leave the kids with some friends. However, I get that it is her wedding and her decision, so I just declined to go, stating that I don't want to leave my kids alone without any family to watch them. After I dropped out, my other sisters got the courage to drop out as well, as they also have toddlers they didn't want to leave behind for a couple of days. Then, my cousins began declining to come as well. Now, it has become a huge deal in the family and caused a lot of drama. My brother has called me and yelled at me, saying that I was the one who caused all the problems. I was firm when I told him I wasn't going to his wedding unless I could bring my kids, and that all our sisters/cousins pretty much felt the same way. My parents, who are paying for half of their wedding, are also pissed that so many family members on our side aren't coming. They were already somewhat against the idea of a child-free wedding in the first place, and have now started pressuring sister-in-law to not make it child-free. My sister-in-law refuses to meet in the middle, and says the wedding will remain child-free, but she's also mad at all of us for not coming. She also still expects my parents to help pay for it, which I doubt they'll do at this point. Lol. I'm fine with her having a child-free wedding. I just don't want to be part of it if it means being away from my kids for days. Am I the a-hole? Edit. People keep asking why I'm mostly talking about my sister-in-law and not my brother in the post. I know for a fact my brother was okay with having kids at the wedding. It's the norm in our family, and he loves his nieces/nephews. It's my sister-in-law who wants this to be a child-free thing against the wishes of like 95% of our family and still have my parents foot the bill. My brother's just supporting her to make her happy. Edit. She has an entire 4-day itinerary planned with like 6 events that she expects to all be child-free. Are all of us with toddlers and kids supposed to swing back and forth from hiding our kids in hotels with random sitters to all the wedding activities just to keep my psycho sister-in-law happy? And then pay for it because she sure as hell won't, since our kids are our problems, as she stated to my face. You're the a-hole because you don't seem to know what meet in the middle means. She wants her wedding to be child-free. You want her wedding to not be child-free. You think she won't meet in the middle because she's not changing to what you want. It's super common to have group babysitting at the hotel. All your siblings/cousins can pool resources and get a few people to stay a few hours at the hotel and watch the kids. Maybe even have your parents pay for it as part of the wedding fees. If you don't want to go, don't go. But it doesn't seem like you're trying to actually work something out. Yeah, I don't get how child-free wedding translates into I'd have to leave the kids at home. And if OP is going to complain about spending money to bring kids to the location, they'd have to spend that money if the kids were invited. There's really barely any difference. Everyone brings their kids. A couple of cousins or family friends take turns with childcare while the rest go to the wedding. Trust me, as a kid, I hated having to go to weddings. Hanging out at a hotel pool would be so much more appealing to me. Not a whole. People are entitled to a child-free wedding, but they also have to understand that it's not going to be realistic for most people to leave their kids for days, especially young ones. This should have been an anticipated consequence of a child-free wedding. Your sister-in-law shouldn't have to change her child-free wedding, but she also doesn't get to be mad at out-of-state parents for not coming. I can't believe I had to scroll so far to find this comment. An invitation isn't a summon. If not taking your young children isn't a viable option, then you're fully allowed to decline. Not an a-hole. You're the a-hole. First of all, you're not fine with it, so stop saying you are. You're just trying to make yourself feel better. Second, you've now orchestrated a full-on boycott of her wedding, whether intended or not, and you seem to think it's funny. That's cruel. I don't think this is about the kids. I think you just don't like her and won't admit it because it makes you look bad. If you love your brother, you would find a way to be there, period. I have a hard time believing that there's no possible way you can group the kids together with a babysitter for a few hours. Of course you can, but you don't want to. I'd be crushed if I were her, receiving this welcome into the family. Also, she's blaming only her sister-in-law, as if her brother has nothing to do with it. The last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for kicking my sister out after she didn't do what she said she would? I, 21 female, had a baby 8 days ago via scheduled cesarean. Father isn't around, and I knew he wouldn't be since day one. My sister, 29, we'll call her Annie, fake name, is recently divorced and suffers with infertility. Every time there's a new baby in the family, she offers to help out. Annie asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks after the baby is born and for the few days before to help out. I said yes, knowing I'd need help. The problems started from when we came home. Annie takes her, like literally does everything baby-related, except for nappy changes. She creates mess, which I end up having to clean up everything, while trying to cook for myself/order food, and it has to be done to Annie's preference too if I'm ordering. 5 days ago, I started recording the amount of time I spent with my baby versus what Annie did. Over the last 5 days, I spent a total of 8 hours with my baby, Annie nearly all the rest of the time. I tried asking her to step back a bit and help out with chores like she said she would, but she got defensive. Things got on my last nerve today around an hour ago, realizing she hadn't actually given me back my child all day except once to change her. I'm not really sure what got into me, but I lost my cool. I told her to get out and not come back until she can learn to respect that this is not her baby, and stop taking over everything except the gross bits. My mom called me, saying it was an a-hole move since Annie just wants a baby of her own, and I said that I don't care. I have barely got to see my own child. Am I the a-hole? Edited to Ed, said an outburst was caused by her practically refusing to give me my baby. Now for the top comments. My mom called me, saying it was an a-hole move since Annie just wants a baby of her own. But this baby is not available. It's not hers. It's yours and yours only. If she wants one so badly, she should look into adoption. Absolutely not the a-hole. Exactly, not the a-hole. It is important for you to bond with your baby, not only her. She needed to realize that she couldn't push you around and literally hog your baby. Not the a-hole at all. Tell your mom that what your sister wants is not your problem. You want your baby. Pete's sake. Not the a-hole. It sounds like your sister needs some therapy to deal with her infertility. Or just adopt. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my dad that he doesn't get to be grandfather after he bailed on me? Mom and Dad got married when she was pregnant with my older brother, and a couple years later, they had me. When I was 12 and my brother was 15, we found out that while my brother was Dad's biological child, I was not. Dad found this out around the same time as we did. Dad then immediately began the divorce process and told my brother that if he wanted to continue a relationship with him, he could, but I wasn't allowed. I did message Dad until he blocked me. My brother brought me to Dad's new place one time and Dad slammed the door when he saw me. Dad got back in touch when I was 16 and we talked. The talk didn't go well. He was insulting me, insulting to Mom, and unsympathetic to my point of view, which was basically that Mom messed up, but I didn't deserve to have the only father I'd ever known slam the door in my face. I didn't see him until 5 years later, when I was 21, and he showed up at my university graduation. I let him stay because my brother promised to keep him in check. He congratulated me and gave me a necklace he said he'd meant to give me on my 18th. That was his mother's. Dad's mom, my nan, passed away when I was 8, long before we found out, and we had a great relationship. So I accepted the necklace as a reminder of her, not of him. I'm now 23, and I've just had a baby. A boy. I posted a selfie back in March that showed I was pregnant, and a few people sent me baby things. I didn't ask for it. One thing that arrived was a blanket with a card congratulating me, and the card said, "Love Dad." He didn't reach out to me after this. I've been home from the hospital for a few months now, and I decided now was the time to post a birth announcement. Nothing major and no pictures, just a quick, "Pleased to report that baby was born and date with no issues, and we're both home safe and sound." Dad has now messaged me, saying he was upset that I didn't reach out to him personally to let him know he had a grandson. I responded that he doesn't have a grandson, because he doesn't have a daughter. He said that I'm his daughter, and I responded, "Until you walk out on us both. You know this kid isn't related to you either, right?" He then told me that he couldn't believe that I was acting so childish and cruel, and said that this has been hard for him too, and I should develop some empathy for him before hanging up. I vented to my brother about it, and he sided with Dad. He said I'm being unnecessarily harsh, especially with my final comment, and that it was hard for Dad too, and I need to get over myself, stop being petty, and pull my head out of my behind before hanging up. I'm not making any decisions off the consensus here, but I cannot see Dad's side here, and I have no one to talk to except for a 3-month-old, so if anyone can give me a little more perspective, I'd appreciate it. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Can we leave my mother out of this, please? Her and Dad's drama is only tangential to the actual conflict between me and Dad. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your dad needs to first acknowledge the damage it caused to 12 to 21-year-old you. Especially that 12-year-old little girl. My heart breaks. If he cannot acknowledge that, he doesn't begin to deserve your forgiveness. Exactly. Not the a-hole. You were still a child. It was fine for your brother because he didn't disown him. Your brother has no right to say stuff like that to you when he had a completely different experience. He lost the privilege of being a granddad when he shut the door in your face. Not the a-hole. In order for him to make amends, he would have to own up to what he did to a child, offer an apology, and if you accepted, then maybe he could try and have a grandfatherly place in the child's life. Your brother got to be the golden child, and you were scapegoated. He has no points of reference on how you feel, and his opinion is baseless. You're protecting your child from going through the same hurt you did. Good on you, OP. Not the a-hole. I feel like the brother and father have probably had long conversations about this, but have never included OP in them and just decided to not acknowledge any wrongdoing on the father's part. How childish. Not the a-hole. This guy sucks, and you are absolutely valid not letting him in your life. He wants the fun parts of having a grandchild without having to admit he did anything wrong in the past. Screw him, and congrats on your baby. Not the a-hole. Your dad left you when you were 12. Up until then, he was your dad. I know it must have hurt him to know your mom cheated on him, but none of that is your fault or responsibility. He gave up any rights to you or your family when he left. You have every right to lay the boundaries that you need to be happy. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for being done with my daughters? I am a 52-year-old male. I got my ex-wife Maggie pregnant when we were in our last year of college. We were both from conservative families, so we got married. From our marriage, I gained 2 daughters, Jenny, age 30, and Cassie, age 27. My wife and I were not a great couple. We married way too young and grew apart. She became more religious as we got older, and I became less religious. She also was always angry at me for something or the other. My political beliefs shifted to be more liberal, and my wife became more conservative. We did our best to not fight in front of the kids, but our arguments were loud and could be heard through the walls. 12 years ago, I found out Maggie was having an affair. Jenny was 17 and going to college soon, while Cassie was still in high school. Maggie's family had set up a trust fund for the girls' education, and Maggie and I kept separate finances, so the money part of the divorce was easy. Custody of Cassie was a fight, and my ex-wife claimed I was abusive. Because our fights were noisy, the girls believed her, and over the next year, they cut me off. My attorney told me that because of the girls' ages, the courts wouldn't force visitation. I kept the lines of communication open, but they cut me out of their lives. I was heartbroken. I sank into a depression. Over time, I rationalized that the girls were adults, and that I had done my duty to them. My sister has a relationship with them, and through her, I have learned that both of them got married and that Jessica had 2 children. I've heard that their relationship is strained with their mother as she hated their husbands and refused to attend Cassie's wedding. The girls both want to try to reconcile with me. I think that they've realized that I wasn't the villain that my ex-wife painted me to be. I'm done though. Losing them was incredibly painful. I hurt for a long time, and missing their weddings and the birth of my grandchild. Since my divorce, I have refused to get too close to anyone new, and I don't want to rely on anyone. I'm not on social media, and I screen my calls on my personal phone. The girls have tried to call, but I've blocked their numbers. I use email strictly for professional reasons, and I don't do Facebook. My sister is giving me a hard time for not wanting to reconnect because she says that the girls were kids and didn't know what my ex was like. I don't think I have it in me to let anyone in again. Now for the top comments. No a-holes here. I don't have it in me to call you an a-hole. You are deeply hurt, and as a result, are extremely leery and cautious of forming new relationships. The fact that after this much time, you won't form new relationships, though, is concerning. This isn't a healthy attitude, and you really need to consider therapy. As for your girls, I do agree with your sister. They were kids and didn't understand the ramifications of their actions, particularly the 14-year-old, and didn't truly know what was going on. They likely felt forced to choose sides, and sadly, they chose wrong. But that's not their fault either. They're as much victims of your ex as you are. That being said, barring truly horrific actions, you don't get to be done with your children. That's not how parenting works. And your girls haven't done anything truly horrific. You're blaming them for your ex's actions. I do think you should try to re-establish a relationship with your girls. I would go slowly. More importantly, though, I think you need to get some help to deal with what has happened and how it has affected you and your ability to create relationships. I agree that no a-holes here. But one thing, you say that it isn't possible to be done with your children, which is true, but didn't his daughters already decide to be done with Opie over some lies? Isn't that the whole reason Opie isn't being receptive now, is because they've been done with him? And as far as he's concerned, they've made their decision and they don't get to change their minds? No a-holes here, but I think you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're choosing at the stage to hold on to hurt feelings, understandably hurt, instead of embracing what might be a wonderful relationship with your daughters and grandchildren. Don't do this to yourself. Your girls were teenagers when this all went down, and were probably confused and hurting. You now have the chance to start again and get to know the adults that they have become. No a-holes here, and I absolutely agree that now you have a chance to rebuild your relationship with the girls who probably realized their mistakes and want to have you in their adult life. I was estranged from my dad for 20 years. He was the first to reach out and we started our relationship up like we never had been apart. 5 years later, he died. What I wouldn't give to have those 20 years he and I wasted back. Sorry to hear this. Glad you at least got a little time with him before he passed. Now for the last story. Biological mother of my adopted baby wants back into her and our lives. Backstory. A little over a year ago, my best friend passed away after being in a car accident. Shortly after his passing, we discovered that the woman he was casually-ish seeing was pregnant. The woman, being at the start of her career and decently young, had no interest/desire to be a parent. Given the fact that she didn't believe in termination, her words not mine, adoption was the only option. I understood and respected that, until I discovered that she had no desire to put any effort towards finding a suitable family. She was planning on just handing her over to the system and let them figure it out. I couldn't in good conscience allow an innocent baby be handed over to a horrible system, especially not the baby my best friend dreamt about having for as long as I can remember. All he wanted was to be a dad. So I decided to foster the baby and find a suitable adoptive family myself. Towards the end of her pregnancy, at this point the paperwork was drafted but not signed, the biological mother changed her mind and decided that she would keep the baby. I respected this decision and said that given the fact that her dad, my best friend, couldn't be around, I would gladly step up and help where needed. Fast forward to the baby being born, she was born healthy. Everything was great. On day 4, the biological mother called me asking if I could mind the baby for a couple of hours so she could catch up on some sleep. Having had kids myself, I understood that she was having a rough time, and happily obliged. She left the little girl at my house with enough formula for 1 bottle and roughly 3 diapers, and a couple of hours turned into a couple of days. I was relentless in trying to reach her, but no one knew where she was, so eventually I got police involved. They tracked her down, at which point she agreed to sign her daughter over to me. After a couple of weeks, I realized that I could never hand this little girl over to another family and graduated from foster mom to adopted mom. After a hassle with judges, lawyers, social services, and a notary, she was officially my daughter. Very recently, the biological mother contacted me, asking me to be involved in my daughter's life on a regular basis. Now, I'm unsure on what to do. Given how she acted during her pregnancy, not caring about where she ended up, and how she acted abandoning her like that, I don't believe she would be the most stable person in her life, let alone be a positive addition. That leaves me to incline to decline this request. I am conflicted, and this is why. Who am I to refuse a biological mother access to her child? Would I be harming my daughter by declining her bio-mom access? Before adopting, I told myself that when my daughter is old enough to want to meet her bio-mom and decide she wants to do so, I would do anything in my power to make that happen. But it's not like I can discuss this with my daughter right now. But above is directly countered by the fact that I am, in every way but the biological way, her mother. My daughter isn't lacking or wanting for a family. She has one. I am also very doubtful of the fact that her bio-mom is here to stay or will add to her life in any way. When I ask her as to why she's contacting me now, almost a year later, she said because it's my kid and I get to decide whatever I want whenever I want. On top of that, she threatened to have the adoption annulled if I didn't oblige. Obviously, legally speaking, she doesn't have a leg to stand on. So, do I allow her biological mom regular visitation so they can bond as the baby grows up, Assuming the bio mom keeps showing up, or do I stick to my original plan and let my daughter decide on when/how/if she wants to meet her biological mother when she is ready? Personally, I would rather ban this woman from our lives, but this is all about what is best for my baby. So how do I do right by my daughter? Edit. I feel like I should add that an attorney has been contacted and has assured me that she doesn't have a leg to stand on, that everything is up to my discretion, and short of me being mistreating/neglecting, nothing can change that. Edit 2. I clarified the steps that were taken to officially adopt my daughter a little as it was causing confusion. No, you absolutely do not let her near that kid. Even under normal circumstances, it would be questionable. But she's threatening you and telling you that she will exercise power that she doesn't even have. You need to show her that you are in complete control of this situation, and that any contact she has with the child will be because you are willing to allow it. Until she understands the reality of who is in charge here, she gets nothing. And under no circumstances should you feel obligated to be cordial with her. Those are some really good points. Thank you. I do feel the need to add that I wouldn't ever let any potential visits happen unsupervised. Thank you for responding. I think you have very valid concerns about the stability this woman has in her life right now. She clearly doesn't know what she wants in regards to the pregnancy and birthed child. I think it's the right choice to not let her into your lives at this moment. However, I would be very open with your child about everything as she's growing up. Make sure she knows it's always her decision if/when she would like to meet her, once she is old enough to have an opinion on it. That is, I wouldn't wait until she is a teen to have the talk, but a literal baby cannot make any decisions. It's very important to me she knows all about what a great man her father was. So growing up, she'll hear all about how she ended up being a part of my family, in age-appropriate terms obviously. Don't do it. She's flaked on your daughter already. She's shown who she is. Believe her. Your daughter doesn't need to wonder why her mom bounces in and out of her life. Wait till she's 18. Oh, I am her mom. She is just a... That is a very good point, and thank you for your advice. I appreciate it. Am I the a-hole for choosing my budget over my boyfriend this Halloween? Plus update. Original post. I need some perspective here. This whole thing is so out of control. I, 28 female, own my house and my boyfriend, 29 male, moved in January. We had a ton of early money arguments and agreed that we would keep to a household budget. Also, he agreed to pay down his credit card debt. I have more flexibility in my personal spending than he does. Early after we moved in, my boyfriend told me that as a kid, he always wanted to live in one of the houses that were totally decorated for trick-or-treat and handed out full-size candy. Here's where I messed up. I took this as a comment and not a plan. When the end of September came, we went to the Halloween store and he was under the impression we had savings for this. I didn't know. We go over the monthly budget together and it was never listed. When he found out that there was no Halloween savings, we had an argument. Afterwards, I talked to friends who all said he had talked about trick-or-treat extensively and how much it meant. I chalked this one up to a misunderstanding on my part, so I came up with $500 of my money and went to him with an apology. He decided to buy one big piece, an animatronic clown and some lights, and it burned through the $500. Plus, he put a little on his own credit card. He wanted another big piece and was mad I wouldn't put in on my credit card. I asked if he wanted to put up handmade decorations or spider webs, but he said it would look cheap. A few weeks later, we had a fight over candy. He was still stuck on buying full-size bars. We easily get over 250 trick-or-treaters, and I said we just don't have that much money. So, we got the bulk bags of good small bars. I also have these little coloring books for the allergic and diabetic kids. Jump forward to Halloween. Early kids show up and he's letting them grab handfuls. I reminded him we have a ton of trick-or-treaters coming, and he got really annoyed. I had ordered a pizza for us, so I get it and go inside for about 10 minutes. By the time I came back out, the trick-or-treat bowls were empty. He had been dumping a third of a bowl in each kid's bag, and had given out all the coloring books to whatever kids came along. He then told me that I'd have to go run out and buy more candy on my credit card. I said I wasn't going to do that, and it wasn't my fault he just handed out 20 pounds of candy. He started yelling right there in front of the kids, and I told him to come inside. He responded that he wasn't stopped trick-or-treating even if there was no candy. I told him to have fun with the clown and went inside. He came in 15 minutes later, then demanded I leave for the night so that he could clear his head. He argued it was fair because I had already eaten, and it was my fault that trick-or-treat was ruined because I'm cheap. I handed the rest of the pizza at him and refused. He left and went to a friend's house, and I guess they spent the rest of the night drinking, handing out trick-or-treat candy and texting me how awful and cheap I am. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. It sounds to me like you're his ATM, not his girlfriend. Seriously, whatever issues he had to create so much credit card debt in the first place have not been resolved. He's fixing to ruin your credit rating, not raise his own. A lot of the debt is understandable. He spent part of his childhood in foster care, and his parents kicked him out when he was 18 with nothing really. He went into debt early to pay for his basic needs, never really learned how to have financial literacy. Only when I pointed it out did he start to pay more than the minimum on his debts, and start to work his way out of it. What does he bring to your relationship though? Does he pay bills, rent, contribute in any way? Or are you trying to save and change him? That's a trap people fall into trying to change their significant other, and it rarely if ever works. You end up wasting half your life on them. The fact he ran and cried to his friend and they texted you, basically how horrible you are, should give you a huge clue into what kind of person your boyfriend is. And it's not good. After we had an argument first month, I set up a monthly house budget that just covers communal things, and he has been contributing his half to it since. So half mortgage, utilities, etc. Because so much of his money is going to debt, I have more flexible personal budget, but I put money into savings. But yeah, financially he pulls his weight, and he spent the summer being compulsive about having a perfect lawn. So it's not like he is useless around a house. He was under the impression we had savings for this. No, he wasn't, because he didn't contribute to any savings for this. He was under the impression you were going to cave and pay for it. And she did too, just not to his expectations. He will never change. And now for the update. I posted an AITA in early November about something that happened with my boyfriend. He had spent a ton of money on Halloween decorations and blamed me for ruining trick-or-treat. I wasn't sure where to post an update, so here I am. Everyone, and I do mean everyone online, basically said I was in the right and said some truly dire things about my relationship. I won't lie, there was so much anger towards him. I sort of shut down. When I started getting requests from actual news sources for more information, I just basically logged out and just decided to forget anything ever happened. We met the next day, as he had spent a few nights at his friend's house. I said that for things to continue, we needed couples counseling, and I expected him to set up the whole thing. He was surprisingly open to this and said he would work on it, and that's where things started to unravel. Our mutual friends had been really in his corner, throwing shades at me. But I found out the story that he had told them was way off from the truth. In his version, I prevented any money for Halloween and had gone cheap on trick-or-treat candy and was only handing it out to children I liked. Once they sort of heard my version, backed up with pictures and receipts, the support went to me. In fact, his friends have been giving him a lot of cribbing about how he acted, which my now ex hates. In the meantime, he had been working on getting us counseling but found that getting therapy on his insurance meant months-long waiting lists. So instead, he came up with this couples coach who was religious. I'm not religious and wasn't thrilled by this, but figured it was better than nothing. Our first meeting was only 3 days after I posted. One funny thing that came up was that my ex immediately handed over a printout of the household budget, and the coach praised it. But the coach thought my ex was the one who wrote it, and that I was failing to follow it. So what followed was this weird thing where my ex wanted all the praise, but also wanted the coach to badmouth the budget because my ex hates it. It took the better part of the first session to explain to him the actual situation, and the coach was weird about the fact that it was the woman in the relationship dictating money, even though he liked the budget itself. This was a lot of issues later actually. The next day, one of our friends found a Reddit post and sent it to my ex and all hell broke loose, with him saying that I had betrayed his trust. Our next couples coaching session was all about that, and honestly, I felt terrible for airing his dirty laundry. The coach and my ex both dunked on me a ton in this time, that I had publicly humiliated my ex. Obviously, I'm updating, so I don't care about embarrassing my ex anymore. He has this username and will probably read this. Whatever. One thing that was seemingly positive at first about coaching was the coach pointed out that my ex had never had the ability to have holiday traditions because of his upbringing. I genuinely felt bad about this, and rolling into Christmas made a huge attempt to incorporate him into my family's traditions and to ask if there's anything he wanted to do. He responded by crapping all over my family's traditions, and his only contribution was to suggest something really extravagant that would have cost a fortune. I swear, he only did this just to badmouth me when I said no. This was all bookended by our twice-a-week visits to the couple's coach who I increasingly hated. He would go through super religious prayers and having issue with us living together before marriage. Neither my ex or I responded positively to this, but my ex would get really into it when the coach would talk about more misogynistic men as head of household stuff. When I said I'd prefer moving to a regular therapist, my ex said I was undermining his work getting us help. There's a dozen little things that happened in there where I should have broken up. But last week was the real final straw. Ever since my ex found a post I had made on Reddit, he has been obsessed with going through my phone. But because of my career, I wouldn't let him. I have a lot of emails and accesses on my phone that's sensitive information in regards to my work. I made a compromise that he could ask who I was texting, etc., and I'd show him at any point. This wasn't good enough. I don't know how he got into my phone, but he went through it fully and started raging out that I was keeping things from him. But none of it had any relation to him. Like, I had a group chat where we were planning a wedding shower for a friend. He's only met this friend in passing. He knew I was helping plan it, but was mad that I hadn't let him know every little detail. Specifically, we were surprising the bride by flying in her aunt who she rarely sees. I wasn't contributing to this financially, just knew about it. And somehow my not telling him that specific little thing was keeping secrets? We were still fighting over this when we went to a party with friends. Apparently, in digging through my old chats, he found where a friend of mine had talked to me in confidence of a tragedy she went through. Only her husband and sisters were really in the know. My ex was drunk and started talking about this loudly to her with her husband right there. Her husband told her to shut up, but my ex basically got all superior about knowing things and there not being secrets. It was very close to being a fight. I told him not to come back to my house after that, and he seems really shocked we broke up. I'm still numb about all of this. But yeah, him? Never again. I remember that post. I'm sorry that he was such a loser. That whole Halloween thing was so weird and whiny of him, and absolutely a zero of the update is a surprise. It's so hard to imagine being the person posting these stories and hearing such a unanimous denunciation of your significant other. I can't imagine being able to break up with someone over the opinions of strangers, but that guy was bunk. I'm really glad that you're free of that controlling person, and I hope that he gets the help he needs. He won't, but we can say the words. I just went back and reread your first post. Just wanted to add, I'd completely forgotten about that weird $500 lawn clown. I guess you can too now. Too bad you can't return the ex, and hopefully get a refund. I remember you. I knew exactly who you are before I went and reread your first post. First, I'm glad you broke up. You really do deserve better. I know your ex probably had some good traits, but his inability to budget, inability to take responsibility, and his overwhelming sense of entitlement doomed your relationship. It sounds like his time in foster care damaged him, and he is trying to fill that emotional void by buying expensive things for himself. Please don't let him love bomb you into taking him back. He will promise everything under the sun, that he will change, follow a budget, get counseling, etc. But the truth is that he definitely needs counseling, but he needs to get it because he wants it for himself, not to keep a relationship with you. Because right now he really doesn't see anything with how he is, and he will do the minimum to keep you hooked in and then slide into his old ways. He is not mature enough to be in a relationship, and you will not be doing him any favors by taking him back. He needs to figure out how to be an adult and manage his life on his own. Also, he sounds quite capable of taking out loans or credit cards behind your back, and I would definitely advise you to keep an eye on your credit score. Good luck, and I wish you many internet hugs. This is a pretty nice community, and you are welcome to check in for support anytime. Yes, 1000% freeze your credit OP. If he snooped in your phone, you have no idea what else he snooped in. I would also recommend changing your passwords and updating your security questions to information he doesn't know. He's probably not going to do anything, but why risk it when prevention is so easy? Last story. Am I the a-hole for leaving my boyfriend and his friends behind after agreeing to be the designated driver? My 33 female boyfriend, 33 male of 4 years, is a big football fan. Andy has a tradition of meeting up with his high school friends at a bar for Super Bowl every year. It's often the only time in a year he gets to see some of these friends because they're busy with their families and life. I don't like football, so I'm happy to be able to drop him off somewhere, have an evening to myself, and pick him up when he's ready to come home. He tends to go hard with the alcohol when he's out with his group. Last night, my boyfriend texted me that he was almost ready to be picked up, so I headed to the bar. He wasn't as ready as he made it seem, so I ended up going in and sitting down with them while everyone finished their rounds of drinks. He was pretty drunk, and he started getting handsy in a way that I wasn't comfortable with out in public. So I politely asked him to stop. I didn't want to make a scene, so I leaned in to whisper in his ear asking to stop. He got angry and whispered back, "You should consider yourself lucky that I'm going home with you. I could go home with any woman here if I wanted to." He couldn't, but has always been a dreamer, lol. I was taken aback as he's never said anything like that to me before. I get he was drunk, but still. Anger set in and I excused myself as if I was going to the bathroom. I ended up leaving and texted him to let him know I left. Unfortunately, he had arranged for me to drive two of his friends home too. Wouldn't have been an issue, but he also hadn't communicated that with me. Instead of calling an Uber or taxi like I assume he would, one of his friends called his wife. The wife had to wake their toddler up to go and pick them up. My boyfriend was furious when he came home, and still is this morning. He slept on the couch and we had an argument before he left for work. He says I embarrassed him by just up and leaving. He vehemently denies saying what he did, doesn't recall getting handsy, and insists he wasn't that drunk last night. I also got an angry text from the wife saying I was an a-hole for leaving them drunk and stranded, forcing her to wake her toddler up to go and pick them up. She also had a vague passive-aggressive Facebook post up calling me out. Now I'm questioning whether I overreacted. Maybe I should have just brushed off his comment because he was drunk and followed through on the commitment I made. I just felt so disrespected by what he said after I asked him to stop doing something that was making me uncomfortable. So am I the a-hole for leaving my drunk boyfriend and his friends stranded after the Super Bowl? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Growing up with an alcoholic teaches you that what they say when they are drunk is what they really think all the time. Just now the filters are gone and they say it. Sick of people excusing drunk people saying awful crap. The booze didn't create the words. The booze set them free. Unfortunately, you're correct. I learned this lesson when my ex, an alcoholic, ultimately told me he loved his ex from his time in the service abroad more than he'd ever loved me. Even without that fact, he never asked her to take other friends home. She thought he'd catch an Uber, which is reasonable. The friend didn't have to wake his wife and kid. Their all-adults who could have figured it out safely with a ride share. She's getting the scapegoat because he doesn't love her anyway and wants a hotter girlfriend. He, in fact, just told her that himself. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Unless you stay with your boyfriend, then you'd be an a-hole to yourself. He caused the first issue by asking you to get him, and then disrespecting you by not being ready when you got there. You were very accommodating to stay as long as you did. Strike one. Then he made you uncomfortable and told you that you should be grateful for it because he could just leave you. That's 100% him being an a-hole. Strike two. Then he has the audacity to be angry with you, denying how big an a-hole he was, and failing to defend you to his friends and friend's wife? She's justifiably upset and no doubt was lied to about why you left, so she's upset with the wrong person. But that's your boyfriend's fault. Strike three. I'm sure you could list some sort of nice qualities he has that wouldn't be mentioned here. I don't see how they would redeem his disrespect.